Thank you to our wonderful musicians for opening our hearts and helping us to settle into this beautiful space. Good afternoon and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I am the Reverend Lora Young, and I serve our sister congregation in Cottonwood Heights. And it is an honor to be invited to be with you here this afternoon as we honor and remember with deep love and affection, Paul. Thank you to Penny and to her children and her grandchildren for inviting me to know a little bit about this amazing human being who has shaped and touched and uplifted your lives. To all of those who are gathered here in this space and to those who are gathered in our online community, thank you. Your presence here is a testament to the love that was given and received and shared and laughed with Paul. Paul touched many, many lives. And even though I didn't personally get a chance to know Paul, I am told that he was enthusiastic about life, that he loved learning. He earned both a master's in social work and a PhD in psychology, which is no small feat. And he practiced side by side with his beloved wife, Penny, for 35 years as a counselor. And when he wasn't helping other people find and make meaning in their lives, he was out in the great outdoors, making and finding his own, hiking and skiing and the mountains of our beautiful, beautiful valleys here, and advocating for their preservation as a board member of Save Our Canyons. He was one of those interesting modern men who both understood the depths of the inside of the heart and glorified in the outside of the world. And he truly, truly adored Penny, his wife of nearly 53 years. Together, they built a life here in Salt Lake, welcoming their 2 children, Peter and Elli, and later 3 grandchildren, who he absolutely delighted in. Paul died suddenly and far too soon. You were not done loving him. He was taken by Legionnaire's disease, contracted on a trip intended for relaxation and renewal with his beloved. It is hard to understand how someone so vibrant, so enthusiastic, so healthy, and so alive can be so suddenly felled. There is so much we do not yet understand about the immune system and about this disease. One way that you and I and we can collectively honor and participate in helping to prevent this kind of preventable suffering is to consider whole body donation. The blessing of whole body donation has meant life and recovery for thousands of people over many decades. And if you would like more information on that, it will be available in the reception hall after the service. The University of Utah School of Medicine makes a tremendous difference, and your donation can help further that research and that hope. And Paul's family has made a dedicated effort to this, and they ask for your consideration as well as you move through your life and your communities. So let us settle into this space a little deeper. I invite you to place your feet firmly on the ground and relax perhaps your hands or that jaw that might be gripping and wondering, how am I supposed to be in my body in a memorial service? And the answer is just to be here, just to breathe. Just to tune in to your own heart and know that that is enough. You are enough. And even though you didn't have enough time with Paul, perhaps today will move you a further along this pathway that we call grief, and allow there to be a space in your heart that you can find rest. Grief is a very strange landscape, and it visits all of us. And I know that you miss Paul terribly. I think Paul would forgive me in saying this on his behalf, that he would want you to remain committed to living your life with integrity and kindness, joy, and enthusiasm. Let your heart now just breathe into this space. Make it holy and sacred by your gentle human presence here. Let us settle now for a time of sharing from Paul's family and friends, those who loved and knew him in his life, and bring us their memories to share. I'll invite Penny to come forward first.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for being with us today. I must begin by sending the biggest heartfelt, loving thank you to Peter and Elli. They steadfastly stood by my side, advocating for my health at the UMed Center, all while dealing with their own grief over losing Paul. Their incredible tenacity amidst countless snowstorms, end-of-life issues with Paul, balancing their own busy work schedules from a hotel room, and sending me heartfelt virtual hugs from the hospital hallway, will forever be among my most touching and meaningful memories. Thank you both from the bottom of my heart. I would also like to thank their spouses, Nikki and Nick, and my darling grandchildren, Ames, Cora, and Nate, who endured without a mom and dad for such a long time, and who sent so many cheering get-well wishes. To my dear friends, both near and far, who buoyed me up with loving texts, delicious meals, visits, helped with sprinklers and yard work, fixed lawn chairs, and chirping fire alarms. Sent love texts, flower bouquets galore, computer help for the techno-challenged, walks, heartfelt cards, and countless loving good wishes. I celebrate all that you have done for me. I couldn't have made it without you. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to the many, many friends who have pitched in countless generous hours for help with this celebration of life. You are all the truest of friends. Thank you for standing by my side. I am so grateful and appreciative for all that you have done for me. So now let's celebrate Paul, the sweet man with whom I've spent most of my happy, lucky life. Paul and I knew of each other many years before we actually met, as our fathers, both physicians, worked in the same hospital. When my parents and about 5 or 6 other families got together to purchase the land to start the Cottonwood Club, it was Paul who became, at a very young age, the director of the swimming and diving program there. In my very early teens, I used to help at swim meets, but with 3.5 years difference in age, I only saw him as the swim coach. Here we fast forward several years to the night before I leave for my freshman year at Lewis and Clark College. My mom had told me that Paul Dalrymple had called earlier that day. He was transferring to Lewis and Clark College after a couple... Thank you. He was transferring to Lewis and Clark College after a couple of semesters of study through the University of Utah in Germany. I brushed it off rather cavalierly until that evening when my friends and I, in a farewell gesture, were eating pie at Corey Anderson's Pie on Highland Drive. As I was delving enthusiastically into my chocolate extravaganza, the entry door flew open to reveal a handsome, fully bearded, dark-haired Paul Dalrymple. Needless to say, I was smitten. It was totally love at first sight, and I was incapable of finishing my chocolate pie. Having never had any sisters, living in an all-women's dorm was an amazing awakening into the smart and savvy ways of women en masse in the college world. In a matter of days, no, more like hours, my dormies knew Paul's every detail, from class schedule to parking spot to dining preferences. I was fully expected to appreciate their intense efforts by complying with their requests for conversational interactions and more, with accurate reporting back to the mothership. Now I ask you, was this the birth of stalking? I'm happy to report that, to my great joy, it was the birth of a wonderful 2 years of dating, interspersed with my living in France for 6 months in a study abroad. Paul enthusiastically awaited detailed reports of all of my French adventures and of each and every pastry I managed to snarf down. Paul was the quintessential scholar and traveler by then and relished in all my experiences. We loved being at Lewis and Clark together and even planned to move into a small rental house in the fall of 1970 after my sophomore year and his graduation. But as fate would have it, my staunchly disciplined European father would not have his only daughter live under those circumstances with Paul. While I worked that summer in a gift shop on Nantucket, my father needled Paul, who was working as an orderly in the hospital, introducing the topic of marriage, as opposed to living together. The letter urging me to come home 2 weeks early to tie the knot wasn't met with a lot of enthusiasm on my part. However, my Nantucket sisters in residence immediately helped me see the error of my thinking, and the wedding invites were handmade in the living room, the ring created and made, and joy spread across the airways. We were married over Labor Day in my parents' backyard with a multi-layered chocolate wedding cake, which, eating every last bite, reassured me that I'd made the right decision. I can honestly say that most of our 52 and a half married years were such an adventure. Paul was an incredibly wonderful person with a love of many things. He loved mantle clocks and full moons, especially with cricket overtures. He enjoyed Ricola cough drops even when he didn't have a cough. And there's a bag or bowl in most rooms of the house. He had a penchant for slapstick comedy, and at times could laugh so hard while watching a movie he'd have to leave the room to catch his breath. Good, rich coffee was a must, as were my chocolate chip cookies. He enjoyed Scottish shortbread, and a good nap was an essential part of his day, or as the grandkids say, Grandpa is taking 5. He always carried Band-Aids in his wallet, and countless kids at parks, the zoo, or wherever left their tears behind when he soothingly applied that magic strip. He had a fantastic belt buckle collection, many of which you'll see at the reception afterwards this afternoon, often acquired from our travels. He never left home without a tiny Swiss Army knife from which TSA has probably started their own collection from his confiscated ones. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our darling kitty, Zinni. She was a skinny little outdoor cat who had a total affinity for Paul. Anytime he gardened, she'd plop down across his line of weeding or languish over the top of the fence to make sure she got as many pets and loves as possible. I'm not quite sure who enjoyed those moments more, Paul or Zinni. We both loved movies and enjoyed them to this day. Sitting in a dark theater, my sensitive heart often led me to tears. And then I'd feel Paul's sweet little hand pressing a cloth handkerchief into my lap. Paul loved to read and was a news junkie. He read mostly nonfiction and was kind enough to share newly acquired knowledge with all of us. Before it was popular, Paul started carrying a Palm Pilot in his breast pocket. A 3x5 card and a pen helped both of us remember things over the years. Paul had an uncanny way of making young and old alike feel comfortable around him. People enjoyed his sense of humor and his easygoing, caring manner. Paul and I had 8 wonderful years together before we welcomed Peter, and then 3 years later, Elli, into the world. Our 2 children were the best things that ever happened to us, helping us experience unimaginable joy, excessive worry at times, and opening up a world of new experiences. Paul was a loving, engaged parent with both kids, and now with our incredible 3 grandchildren. He was available to read stories, play Legos, ski, play games, swim, or laugh together. Our grandchildren brought out the very ever-present kid in Paul. Working together was the real frosting on the cake. When we merged our 2 private practices into one, with Paul as a psychologist and me as a clinical social worker, our motto, work hard, play hard, took on a whole new dimension. We enjoyed 35-plus years of collegial interaction together and many great coffee breaks as well. Our cabin became one of Paul's most treasured and favorite spots. No matter the season, it afforded him a sacred space in which to have his deepest thoughts and beautiful, lush surroundings to share with family and friends. Paul would wear his treasured yellow Patagonia marsupial and bring in the day with a good cup of coffee on the deck, or later converse with the full moon over a glass of wine. Traveling with and without our kids as they grew up was an integral part of our lives. We visited France many times, Mexico, most of Europe, South Africa to grab Peter from his study abroad, and Australia to entice Elli home from her study abroad. An amazing trip to China and one to Vietnam opened our eyes to new cultures. A trip to Spain years ago and learning about how Muslims and Christians lived and worked in harmony gave us hope for a less divided future world. In essence, travel was the classroom of choice for many a year. Paul mellowed considerably as he aged and volunteered more around town. He delighted helping at the Salt Lake District Early Education Center, where several little kids thought for sure he was Santa Claus. And he became really committed to registering voters with Salt Lake Indivisible. In his chartreuse green shirt that said, "Are you registered to vote?" in bold letters, he approached Liberty Park drum circles, urging participants to register as a vehicle for getting marijuana use approved in the state. He was very successful. He also totally embraced both pickleball and beekeeping. His natural athleticism and his tenacity gave him permission to go after every ball and to delight in his clever moves on the court. Beekeeping was like a religious experience for him, and he became totally dedicated to those little insects, and they in turn produced some of the tastiest honey ever. My dear, sweetest Polly, I could go on and on. But alas, the moment has come to say goodbye for now and to thank you for the best years of my life. Thank you for so much joy, for so many adventures, and for our wonderful children and grandchildren. I won't say adieu, but look for me down the road in that great little restaurant in Paris near the Musée d'Orsay. You know, the one where we had that delicious soup à l'oignon. Look for me there, sweetie. I'll be wearing the red beret.
Well, I've never done this before, admittedly, so I figured the best way would just write my dad a letter. Dear Dad, I miss you. I think about you a lot. And I'm grateful for all of the memories we shared together. You've left a lasting impact on my life. I'm so thankful for your friendship and for our partnership. You were always accessible to me. I never felt like I needed to compete for your attention. You were present with me, and when I needed you, you were there. You were reliable and steadfast. You were patient with me. You knew just when to push and just when to pull, and you knew when to do nothing at all. You were a constant guide for me, a spiritual Sherpa of sorts. Trust the journey, you would say. Trust the journey. I loved our camping trip together. I loved that you visited me in South Africa and that you watched me play tennis. I loved our time together in Napa and the picture-perfect ski day we shared at Deer Valley a few months before you passed. Our chairlift conversations were special. We talked about everything: life, love, family, money, health, happiness. I take complete comfort in the fact that we talked about almost everything that we needed to up to this point. You gave me an incredible foundation. I don't have any regrets with you, and I don't require any closure. You were gregarious and calm. You taught me the word equanimity. You said it meant grace under pressure. Someday that might come in handy, you said. You taught me the importance of hard work and hustle and follow through. Nobody follows through anymore, you used to say. Make sure you do the job well. Always aware of the highs and lows of my chosen profession, you cautioned me on not losing sight of what's important. If you're not happy within, you'll never be happy without, you would say. You believed in me before I believed in myself, and in moments of struggle, you were always there to offer sage counsel to help me appreciate the value of being patient and tenacious. Your work ethic inspired me. Perhaps that was the diver in you. Keep at it until you get it right. You applied that same energy to the family, to Mom, to Elli, to our respective spouses, and to 3 incredible grandchildren who adored you. Over the last few years, you and I talked a lot about legacy. As I turned the corner on the first half of my life and considered my future and my purpose, you enlightened me with your own wisdom. You wrote me a letter, and you said, I felt really good when I retired. I had helped a lot of people. I was pretty much on top of my game, and I was respected by other professionals. You certainly were. You leave behind a fantastic legacy as a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, a helper, a builder, a giver. I couldn't have asked for a better dad. Thanks for being a best friend. Thanks for everything you've done for me and my family.
My dad was a wonderful guy, wasn't he? He was the sort of person who didn't need to be the loudest or the showiest person in the room. He exhibited a more subtle aura. When talking with him, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room, offering advice without judgment. The way he listened to people also carried on how he thought about nature. He would often stop me to take note of a beautiful sunset, the falling snow, or the sound of rain. He would say, "Store this in your memory so that when you have a bad day, you can draw upon it." As pensive as he was, he loved a good laugh, and he didn't mind chuckling at his own actions. Like the time he was studying abroad in Germany and mispronounced the word for camera lens. Little did he know he was asking the saleswoman for breasts for his camera. He knew something went terribly wrong when the manager promptly walked him out the store. If you knew my dad, you knew he loved good coffee, white wine, and ice cream. One story I love telling Cora and Nate is that when I was little, I was asked to retrieve something from our basement. If you recall our basement at 656 South, it was a place to be avoided. On this particular afternoon, I was asked to get something from the freezer. When I went down there and turned on the light, I was surprised to find my dad, spoon in hand, secretly devouring a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. As my dad used to say, busted. It was also then that I realized what the spoon was used for that sat on top of the basement freezer. Dad, I hope you're surrounded by many pints of Ben & Jerry's right now. Someone sent me this poem, and I'd like to share it with you. It's a Native American prayer. I give you this one thought to keep. I am with you still, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awake in the morning hush, I am the swift uplifting of quiet birds in circle flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you each new dawn. Thank you.
Paul was such an interesting person that I still have some new ground to cover. Penny, Elli, Peter, Paul's death is such a loss for your family. Your many friends and I are so sorry and so sad. What a good man he was. Paul was our family friend for many years, and I would like to share some of my memories of him with you. I knew him from the time that our daughter Maggie and his daughter Elli, notes here, first played soccer together until now, when their kids, our grandkids, are almost in their teens. I knew him through trips together and dinners together and many late-night discussions that he no doubt wished would have ended sooner. We ignored his yawns. About once a month, Paul and I would go down to the pub for beers and dinner. We talked about travel and books and movies and our outdoor adventures together. We talked a lot about our families. We would joke about our wives, both of whom are characters and independent creatures. But beneath the jokes was an unspoken acknowledgement that we were lucky in marriage. Paul loved you, Penny. The list of our trips together includes China, sea kayaking and camping in the San Juan Islands, backpacking in the Uinta Mountains, Spain, and backpacking to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and out again, 5 miles of steep uphill. Penny, Paul, my wife, and I knew the years were upon us when we arrived at the campsite to find Maggie and Elli napping, having arrived long before we trudged in. The longer I knew Paul, the more I realized he prioritized easily. He kept to schedules that were important, such as taking care of his clients and arranging a complicated agenda to see scores of movies every year at Sundance. But he also taught me something about flexibility. While I have been accused of being somewhat rigid, he often operated on what he called Dalrymple Standard Time, which was much more variable. Yet operating on DST, he accomplished a lot, had time for fun, and lived a very full life. Paul was such a good person to travel with. He was cheerful and optimistic. He always carried a Band-Aid in his wallet to help with the owies while away from home. He was a good driver and gave excellent advice. He taught me how to drive on roundabouts. He helped me appreciate art and architecture. People travel for different reasons. Paul had a real interest in local people, landscapes, and museums. It was not always about finding the best travel bargains. He appreciated each new place with a can-do, I am intrigued attitude, and it rubbed off on all who were lucky enough to be with him. I remember Paul as being athletic. He walked briskly, even with a pack on his back, and you could pick him out speeding down a ski run. I remember him zipping around in their kitchen on Immigration Circle, inside, outside, getting drinks, tending the barbecue, all the while serving up smiles with that twinkle in his eye and engaging in conversation. Paul never stopped engaging in life. In recent years, he took up beekeeping. To many of us, bees in large numbers are fearsome creatures. But he talked about bees as being gentle, yet determined. He respected them. He respected all things natural, and that was an essential part of who he was. I so enjoyed that about him. While celebrating his own life, Paul helped me appreciate my own. He had a generous spirit, and some of that rubbed off on me. For example, I have totally forgiven Paul for sleeping through my slideshows. I've come to realize that he was a better photographer than I am anyway. My wife remembers his kindness. She has a friend who took her son to him for counseling. When the son disengaged, Paul asked her if she wanted to stay on to have someone to talk to. She did, and told my wife more than once how much she appreciated him. We saw that competent counselor side of him when we were in China. My wife spilled hot oil and burned her hand at the buffet. Paul was carrying Band-Aids, pain medication and a Band-Aid, and he rushed to her aid. On another occasion, he was sweet and sympathetic when a discussion about pain management turned to Evelyn, our mutual friend who has cancer. Paul was so kind about pain. He was a patient, thoughtful, and empathetic man. I read something recently about how time folds back on itself, how you realize it when you are with longtime friends. So when we think of Paul, we think of him in many roles. We think of him as the proud father of amusing teenagers. We think of his joy at their weddings. We think of him as the proud grandpa. And we think of him as the man who got out of his car across the street from our house last year. As we watched him walk toward us, we realized that his back hurt and that he was getting older. We saw our own lives reflected in his. I believe that no one really dies until the last time someone says their name. Paul loved us all. Let's not forget to say his name. Thank you.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ames Dalrymple, the grandson of Paul Dalrymple. We're here today to celebrate the life of this wonderful man. I'd like to share a few stories that helped illustrate what kind of grandpa he was. I remember one day we played basketball together. It was a sunny day. I explained the rules of force to him. We were laughing and having so much fun. He made an awesome opponent. I also remember skiing with him. Although I know anyone is better than me at skiing, he helped me thrive in the sport. I'm extremely grateful for everything that he's done. Thank you, Grandpa, for showing me how to live a life without compromise. Thank you for showing me what humility and love is all about. I know my grandpa was not only an inspiration to me, but to so many of you as well. I'm sure he would want you to leave here today, not in the morning, but in rejoicing his life.
Hi, my name is Cora, and before I begin, I want to thank all of you for coming to Paul's celebration of life. Paul is my grandpa. I used to call him Gompa, and he used to call me Sport and Champ. Here's a poem for him. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. Thank you.
It's an extremely hard act to follow Cora and Ames. What a wonderful set of memories shared this afternoon, I should say. Thank you. Now I also know what secret spoons in the basement are for, that ski lifts are for candid, open-hearted conversations, and that there are French cafes that Penny will always remember and look forward to adoring with Paul in some mystical time in the future. And while we all come from different walks of life and we don't know what happens after our embodiment, I would offer you this, physics. I would offer you physics, that we know that no energy is ever lost. It's just organized a little differently. So all that Paul was for you and continues to be for you, that's retained. Every interaction, every bit of DNA, every breath, every moment, it still exists in the universe. It's here. And it's now. Just a little less organized. So I invite you to just be in stillness with that truth and the truth of your love with Paul. Let these memories sink in and fill that space in your heart. And from that place, may we affirm the cycles of life. We know that we are a part of an endless cycle of life and death and a mysterious existence. And we pause in reverence and gratitude for that mystery that is called love. In a few moments, our service will conclude, and you're invited to a time of fellowship and memory making next door. I would invite you to exit through the back and go around as our musicians play our postlude this morning. May you go forth now, knowing that your life matters, that Paul's life mattered, and that that is enough. May it be so. Amen.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Ready?
Ready.
Whoa, this is a heavy one.
It's so heavy.
That is amazing.
Full of honey.
This is a completely full one.
Oh my gosh.
It's beautiful.
Isn't that incredible?
Look, guys, this is like... I know.
So how much do you think that weighs?
This is probably about 3-4 pounds.
Wow.
This guy's a couple stuck on the bottom of it. One just away instead.
Good.
Is that dead? Okay. All right.